So the movie is called Something to Stand For, and it's based on stories from my podcast. The podcast is called The Way I Heard It. I would have called it The Rest of the Story, but that was Paul Harvey's title. And so I couldn't steal his title, but I did borrow his format, which was to basically tell you something you didn't know about somebody you do. So rather than give somebody a lecture or a sermon or a history lesson, give them a mystery, right? Yeah. And let them try and unpack it as you go. I thought Paul Harvey was ingenious in that way. I agree. I think Garrison Keillor and Charles Kuralt and Studs Terkel and George Plimpton, these guys all immersed themselves in the stories before they told them, you know?
They created a world.
They did. And they made it personal, and they also made it relative and relevant, right? And many times they did it on the radio or on the page. You know, they didn't rely on a camera necessarily to do it. They're gone, and in no way do I think I can fill their footsteps. But I do think I can. I do think I can follow in their footsteps.
Yeah.
You know,
you did.
Well, that's what the podcast attempted to do. Those stories turned into a TV show called The Story Behind the Story, and just a few months ago, somebody came and said, one of the guys over at the Fathom Group that do these, theatrical cinematic releases, they said, I have a lot of really great stories in here, and we do these themed events. So what if we did like a Christmas special with all these Christmas-type stories you have? You could find probably 9 or so. And I said, yeah, I could, but what about Independence Day? They're like, great. So we took 9 unapologetically patriotic stories about people you know, but stories you don't. And that just became the basis for the movie. We stitched it together with a field trip of sorts to D.C., where I visit the monuments and the memorials that were constructed to honor some of the people in the film. But it happened so fast, John. And believe me, there's no like wish fulfillment thing on my bucket list to make a movie. But when I really thought about it, I realized, it's a great opportunity in 2024 to put something on the screen. The final story in the movie is actually called Something to Stand For. And I wrote it a few years ago during the whole Colin Kaepernick thing. And I didn't write it in anger, but to your point, I just thought, how can we be so confused? How can you guys not know that the national anthem is a protest song? You can't protest a protest song unless you really fundamentally don't understand how it came to be. And if you don't understand the basic pillars of the history upon which our country's based, then you're really not much different than the person who drives down Van Ness Street in San Francisco with absolutely no understanding of the giant sewer system beneath them, right? So it's the same sort of thing, right? I mean, when I found that Dirty Jobs parallel into this kind of storytelling, it excited me because I realized that in the end, your shows basically, tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems as if the thing that you're offering is understanding and awareness, self-awareness and understanding through a more honest.
It's very similar. It's like, hey, you think this is the issue. There's something underneath the sidewalk. That's it.
And for me, that thing under the sidewalk, that thing in our past, it's always the same thing or a version of it, a variation on a theme. And it's a disconnect between the past and the present, and the connective tissue, the grout between those tiles is gratitude. If you are fundamentally grateful for what Thomas Jefferson did, an imperfect man with an enormous brain and an incredible vision, if you're fundamentally grateful for what he did, you're going to have a hard time pulling a statue down. If you're fundamentally grateful for what electricians do and construction workers do, you're going to have a hard time flipping them off when you're stuck in traffic and late for your appointment, right? So I think in some ways, all of the the jagged little pills that we've become, all the brittleness out there today, could be mitigated. And this will sound very tropey, it's platitudinous, but that attitude of gratitude, it's a thing.
It's absolutely a thing.
And it applies to our history. It applies to our workforce. It applies to our headlines. And, it's very, very hard to feel grateful when you've lost trust in the institutions that we've talked about. But we still have to find a way. Because if we don't, well, it'll just eat us alive.
Well, we're the only historical trajectory is ash. That's it. It's burnt. We burn it to the ground.
Say that again. The only
historical trajectory. We have a whole bunch of roadmaps when it's no, I'm just going to burn your thing to the ground because it's not my thing.
Yeah.
Instead of, and I wonder as you're talking, it reminds me of there was some well-intentioned, and it came out of some faith-based literature back in the 80s. Don't fight in front of your kids. You're going to scare them. You're going to destroy them. Go in the back bedroom. Y'all have your arguments. Y'all fight it out, and then come back out a united front. And that makes sense logically.
That's really good, man.
And you stole from kids this picture of those two people are really getting after it. They're arguing. And they still love each other and they're committed. And so now you have a generation of young people that get married. They are in a long-term committed relationship. They have the one big blow up and they are on to the next because they don't have a mental map for how do I love you and critique and sit in tension with you because we're all going the same direction.
Think of the experts, the expert class upon whom we rely as the parents in your metaphor.
That's right.
And think of the rest of us as the kids. In moments of fear, uncertainty, COVID, we look to these institutions in much the same way a frightened kid would look to a parent, right? And we don't just need a bowl of warm milk, we need the truth.
And the truth.
We need the truth. We need to understand because in reality, we're not actually children.
Right.
We're more like the townspeople in the emperor's new clothes, right? We need courage.
Right.
And we need to stiffen our spines. And we can only do that if we know what the truth is. But our experts, what do we do when our experts not only don't agree on anything, but fight right in front of us? The experts didn't go in the back bedroom to sort it out and come out with a consensus.
Yeah.
They might have tried to stay 6 feet apart. Mask, blah, 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 down the list. Not to make it about that, but we didn't get clear, convincing, consistent guidance.
Right.